Hey everyone, welcome back to Tea Time with Mel and Jay. I'm Jay.
And I'm Mel.
Nice to see everybody again. We're back for
Yeah.
episode six.
6.
This is six in sign language. Six if you're watching. Episode
Oh,
six. Yeah.
episode 6.
Love
How did
it.
we get here? That's like so crazy to me.
Same. So crazy. And we definitely have something completely different today, something that's, churns the feelings. I had a lot of feelings with this. So today we
Yeah.
are going to be reviewing the documentary on HBO Max, Tiger.
Yes.
Tiger Woods documentary. Okay, so first and foremost, I think we should just give a few sentences how overall, like what we thought about it. So, to be honest, my main thought before essentially really even getting into it, I'm like, why is this so long? Like, why is it two parts? Why is it
Totally.
so long? I don't
Totally.
understand. But then
Yeah.
start watching and you're like, oh, I get it. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover. This man
Yeah.
is so deep and disturbed. And
Seriously.
they got
Like
into it. So overall, I wondered why it was so long. I understand why it was so long. I think they went into a little too much detail. I think it could have been a little less time, but overall, I was not into the first episode, and then I went on an upward slope of how I was feeling about it, and then I got really into it, and then by the end I was like crying happy tears. So definitely an emotional roller coaster. That's just me. What about you?
yeah, I mean, I think we had very similar journeys, and I think we were texting at like you had finished it and I was finishing episode 1, and I was ready to write it off. I was like,
Same.
this is like basically just like a rag mag that you would find at like, the grocery store that's like a Star magazine or an Us Weekly. And I was like, it was so salacious. I felt that at points like it was almost disrespectful in the way that they were talking about him. I was like, whoa, like talk about detail. They gave us so much detail, so much information. And I was like, this is a lot. Like this poor man. Like that's kind of what I was like feeling at the end of the first episode. I was like, wow,
Yeah.
he is going to be pissed watching this
Yeah.
because it really goes into this like super 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 personal detail, and I felt like even some of the interviewees were like uncomfortable with some of the information they were sharing because it
Yeah.
was like never before heard. Like I didn't know that much about his father.
Yeah.
I'm glad I do now though, because by the end of the second episode my feelings about Tiger Woods completely changed.
Same. Same. Same.
Like I was really hesitant to even want to review this show because I was like, he's such a dirtbag, he cheated on his wife, blah blah blah. Like, but you really find out how much a victim he was of like, his family, his circumstance.
Yeah.
And, he kind of didn't have a choice in a way of like how mentally screwed with he was. So you really kind of, by the end of it, I was also crying happy tears because here is this comeback and you're like, oh my god, thank god he came back. Like you really were rooting for him at the end. And I think that was what I liked most about the documentary, was that you really had so much compassion for him,
Yeah.
you know. And
Yeah.
as crazy as it got at points and as uncomfortable as I was, I understood because we had to see that part to really like root for him and want him to be good and want him to, rehab himself and everything, understanding his like real demons that he has.
Oh yeah, so many
So,
demons. So if we start back at the
yeah.
beginning, it basically starts out with seeing him grow up and seeing footage of him with his dad, literally 3 months old and 2 years old, hitting golf balls in the garage. And they refer to this throughout the documentary that essentially he was like programmed like a robot. Like he has
Yeah.
no social skills, he has no people skills, And so now,
Nope.
growing up, being programmed like a robot, spending all this time with his dad, who's also a scumbag, excuse my language, RIP.
Yeah, I know. Not
Has
to speak ill of the
scumbag
dead, but
tendencies.
also was an asshole.
Yeah,
Like,
not a good person, programming his son to be like this golf machine. He lacked
yeah,
all the human aspects of a person, like feelings,
yeah,
emotion, like understanding how people work and understanding social situations. And then he's thrown
yeah,
into the spotlight. He literally
yeah,
had no friends. And you see
yeah,
that in episode one, he has no friends. And then he is so uncomfortable being in the spotlight and being spoken to by journalists, by anchors, by photographers, by all these people that are putting him out there.
man,
He has no idea
yeah,
how to act. None.
yeah,
And so, as somebody who at some point not gonna have I'm not gonna ever interview Tiger Woods, but as somebody who has interviewed professional athletes like that are up to that level,
yeah,
you have to have that innate ability to have a conversation, and he did not have that. And so he's already
no,
just starting off with a leg behind. He's already starting off lagging in that
yeah,
aspect, which clearly affected every aspect of his life. So here we have, we're seeing him 19 years old winning these tournaments, and it's like, does he even really want to be
but
there?
yeah,
There's some parts you're like, I don't think he really even wants to be there, and he kind of says that. He's like, I didn't. It's
I
forced.
didn't choose this,
Yeah, I didn't
you
choose.
know, and I loved like the documentary went back and highlighted like twice in the once at the beginning and once at the end, where his dad and mom were like, oh, you can choose, you can, he has the ability to choose and do, you know, whatever with his life, but we're choosing, he's, you know, it's his choice, it's his choice, it's his choice, when it really wasn't. Like that was what he was going to do for the rest of his life, you know, regardless of what they wanted for him,
Yeah,
you know, like that, you know, regardless of what he wanted, you
yeah,
know, he was like, can I play another sport, can I do something else? There was no opportunity for him to do that whatsoever.
yeah. And the fact that one part sticks out to me from the first episode, where he was very quiet in school, and they had his teacher on the documentary, and she brought up a particular time period when Tiger asked her, "Can you ask my dad if I can play something other than golf? I want to do something other than golf." And he's in elementary school at this point, and he's asking his teacher to ask his father, "Can I do something else?" And you know
Yeah,
what? She did ask his father, and you know what? He turned her down and said, "This is what
yeah,
he's doing."
yeah.
No, he's not doing other
This is
things.
what he's gonna do.
Like,
Yeah,
this poor child, like, it's essentially just, I keep going back to it and being like, and also like, he's 25% black as well. He's like mixed race, so he's also in the spotlight and feeling uncomfortable about that, because then there's people talking about race, and how do you even, that's hard to judge those conversations and have those conversations, period. And now,
well,
by
right, and
not
I
having
think,
any like confidence to speak on any level, how are you
right,
in those conversations?
well, and I think also, you know, to the point is like Nike kind of made him like the black
Yeah,
spokesperson,
yeah.
you know, and I think he
Somebody who
was,
can't even speak properly.
no, like, and you know, yeah, they speak about his stutter, you know, and I just don't think anybody really had his best interest in mind. It was kind of like, this is our money ticket, this is what
Yeah,
it's going to be, and we're going to run with it. You know, his dad saw that dollar signs, dollar signs, dollar signs, and like kept him kind of in the dark and kept him so isolated, basically so that he could keep control. And then here you have Nike, who, you know, has him as their, you know, black athlete. He is, you know, whatever. And like, he has this huge responsibility, this huge, not burden, but it's a big deal
yeah.
to, you know, have that weight on your shoulders. So he was kind of damned if he did, damned if he didn't.
I know. And I think once he started winning, he, like, his tenacity to not give up was mind blowing to me. because
Yeah.
yes, you have this man that's basically being manipulated into the best golfer on the planet. He is that.
Yeah.
He is that. And you don't
Yeah.
get that without having an innate skill set, which he obviously had, which was programmed since he was 3 months old.
Yeah.
But there were many, many times in his career, and I'm sure any golf fan will know this, and anybody who watches the documentary will see a little inside clip of it. And there were many times like he could have given up. So he was forced to give up at some points, and we'll dive into what happened with him in his personal life that kind of made him, step back from golf a little bit. But also, he didn't give up. He only stopped when he was forced to, and he made a comeback. So I just love
Totally.
that ability for him to be able to like strive forward regardless of like how much the world is pushing you down. And like there was one part too when, what was the quote, the problem with conquering the world is that the world is going to want its revenge. So essentially, he conquered the world and the world got its revenge on him. But you know what? He's conquering the world again. And the documentary just showed everybody who watches it that you can go through so much, and like, his upbringing, blame it on his dad, blame it on this, blame it on that. But he fell and he rose again. And I really do think differently of him, because you really see like, his mistakes were made because he essentially turned into his father and
Right.
made mistakes like his father did. And obviously you don't see how that affects his father, which we also see his dad pass away in the documentary, which was very sad. But
Totally.
I don't know, it changed my way of thinking about him, because it's not his fault. I don't
Right.
feel
I
like
think
he's to blame.
no,
Obviously,
I agree. I think that like it kind of alleviates the burden of like who he was cast at in like the media.
yeah,
And, if anything, as like crazy as it was, like the whole documentary and like probably, you know, aired a lot of dirty laundry, I think at the end of it, it was good because I think by the end of it, you're really are rooting for him to be a good person.
yeah, absolutely. So here we are, we're seeing him literally win championship after championship. He's like climbing the ranks and like going up and raising his win total to be climb up to like, can he be the highest winning golfer in the world? And then you see his fall, which he has infidelity with his wife. And there were two names that stuck out. There was the waitress in, I think, where was it, Vegas or something? We used to go to Vegas a lot, Mindy Lawton, and that didn't leak because essentially the Tiger team bribed with the National Enquirer that they weren't going to leak the story, because, and they couldn't, I guess the photos were too grainy and it didn't really see. So they were able to overcome that without it really leaking to the world. And then you have Rachel Yucatel, who's here in New York City, and she's a party host. And essentially he like fell in love with this woman, mind you, when she comes on the documentary. I was like, why is Caitlyn Jenner in this
She
documentary?
looks crazy. She looks really crazy.
I was like, Caitlyn Jenner? Like, what do you have to say about Tiger Woods? I'm confused. Like, she really looks like Caitlyn Jenner. Like, not Bruce Jenner, but like Caitlyn Jenner.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah. She was like a
You
dead
agree
ringer.
with me? Like,
Yes.
what is happening?
No, I mean it was definitely very interesting. I mean, I think Mindy was actually from home. Like I think that she was like at like the random diner in their town. And then Rachel was from New York. I really wondered like what club that he had met
They
her
don't.
at, but they don't tell you.
They don't.
But yeah, I mean it was kind of crazy. Like and even she talks about how like he had to compartmentalize, like she was like he had this crazy ability to just like put things into a box
Yeah.
and just be like, if you, because she was like, I'm gonna miss you when you're gone, and he's like, you've got to think of something else.
Yeah.
And I was like, are
That
you a
caught my
psychopath?
attention. Yeah, that caught my attention too. Like, clearly he is void of all emotion because
100%. I don't, he didn't develop like this skill of like having empathy for anything.
he has none.
It just wasn't something that he had the ability to do.
Right. Right. So then, okay, so aside from his infidelity with his wife Elin, who's beautiful, they have two kids at this point, like beautiful children. Um, he's injured. He has lingering back injury. He had at one point no cartilage in his knee, no ACL. He had no ligaments. Had to have surgery. Literally won the 2008 Open, U.S. Open Championship with two broken legs. He was 27th place on the first round on the first day. Literally climbed his way back and won that tournament. And I have goosebumps talking about it right now. The footage that they show you, he's wearing his red Nike, which I feel like he's always in red Nike, sinking the last hole. The crowd behind erupts. Everybody just like jumps up and he just has this fist pump to the air. It's like it's on some sort of list of greatest sports celebrations of all time, because for
Oh,
sure
100%.
it's one of the greatest sports celebrations of all time. And it's so good. Golf, not usually electric in my mind. Like usually it's like dads put it on, it's just to like take
Yeah.
an afternoon nap. But that was electric. That celebration was electric. So he went through some injuries and was
Well, I mean,
prescribed
also so many
painkillers
of those injuries were like self-inflicted as well
for
because of
sure.
his crazy like Navy
Yeah.
SEAL training that he had to do, that he was doing. But again, it's like escaping. Like it was crazy. I mean, like, what did they say? The general was like, you can shoot Tiger anywhere, just not
But
his hands.
not his hands. So they shot his knee, and then his knee blew up, and then his legs broke, and then he still won. My
And
God.
even that image, like that X-ray image of them showing like the cartilage just like
Yes.
disappearing
Yup.
over his
And then,
ACL. I loved it when he was like, Tyler, his caddy, who I loved
yeah.
throughout the whole documentary, and I felt very sad when Tiger kind of ended that relationship with him. But he was like, Tiger, like, you need, like, are you okay? Like, I heard that, and he was like, kindly fuck off. Like, because again, if he got out of his head and allowed himself
To
to
feel.
like feel that pain, he
Game
wouldn't have
over.
been able to go through.
Game
So
over.
when he was like, what did he say? He's like, pain is just pain.
Yeah.
Like you can move through it. But then he ends up like really injuring his body. Like then he becomes, like I think they didn't really say he was addicted to like painkillers or anything like that, but
He
he
was.
had to use Ambien to sleep. Because I think he just had so much anxiety and so much pain,
Yeah. I
like
mean,
physical, mental, emotional, whatever it may be, that he had to take these sleeping pills just to shut himself off for 5 minutes of the day.
and then he had to supplement that during the day with opiates because he was in so much pain. And which brings me to the next part of when he got arrested for driving under the influence. He's pulled over.
It was like the
Yeah,
saddest thing I've ever seen.
so sad seeing those videos, and he's like, I'm on the way to Orange County, and like the cop is like, you're in Jupiter, Florida right now.
Yeah.
What?
Well,
So
you just really see like how broken he is.
yeah.
And from the beginning where, you're right, like in his red shirt, like he is electric. Was powerful.
Yeah.
Like, and so you're seeing this kind of like geeky Adonis, right? For so long. And you've got this image of him. And then people were just hungry for him to fail. And
Yeah.
so then when all of that was blown up, his mugshot, like I remember seeing that mugshot. Like I
Yep.
remember it in every newspaper, every magazine, TV, like people, he had been their wonder boy, their wonderkind, and then they were ready to just kind of like cast him aside and feed him to the fishes. So it was a really sad and tough thing because he said at one point, they were like, well, what are you going to do about these allegations? He was like in an interview and they were like, what are you going to tell your children?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, I'm going to have a conversation with them at some point,
Yeah.
and hope they like forgive me or hope they can understand or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, he's going to have a lot of explaining to do. Like a lot of explaining.
Yeah, because it's essentially all recorded. So like it's
Yeah.
not going anywhere.
For the public. I mean, he had no privacy. None.
None whatsoever. And it's just so sad. And so I mean, it's not like he denied like, oh, I wasn't taking these pills. I don't think he was self-medicating, which with like cocktail of 5 different pills, like you're obviously not going to be able to drive. I mean, I just was thankful he was pulled over. He clearly pulled over for a reason
Right.
and then got in trouble because he was pulled over. And fine, he went to trial, mind you. One of my favorite parts of the documentary was him walking into his trial for his like driving under the influence. He is surrounded by cops and they're just like he has like a blazer and like sunglasses and he's just like
Sunglasses on.
what it reminded me of in the Santa Claus.
Men in Black.
It reminded me of the Santa Claus when Bernard like has his like sunglasses on and all the elves are with him and they're just like through. I'm like, oh my god, this is like the Santa Claus. Love that movie. It's like my favorite, one of my favorite Christmas movies. I'm like, Tiger Woods is Bernard right now, and all these places are the elves. This is amazing.
Oh my god, that's so funny. But it was. I mean, he always had such a stacked entourage. But I mean, the whole thing of like the documentary was like, you, for a man that has no empathy or was not taught empathy and was kept so far away from feeling any like true authentic emotions, feelings, having any true authentic feelings or relationships with people, I think the documentary puts in us, the audience, like the viewer, this enough empathy to like envelop him in, right? Like you just feel so sad for him and proud of him that he was able to get himself out of this hole, because then we see, you know, you have to watch the documentary because it's great, but you do see, you know, again with that same tenacity, but there's like a humility about it. It's like finally he's free from all of those demons, right? Like he goes to rehab. He has made about every single mistake that you could possibly make as a public figure. You know, like you have cheating, you have drug, you have DWIs, you know, you're drinking out late with Vegas girls, and like, you know, you're just a mess. Like he just ended up being a mess. And to see somebody still with like poise and humility come back was the biggest thing ever. You know, I think it was such a the documentary did such a good job at highlighting, you know, again his like rise, and it was slow, and the joy that you see in him playing, you didn't see that before. It was like, I got to win for my dad. I got to win for the people. I got to win for this Nike deal, this $1 million Nike deal that I'm a part of. And they were like, Tiger enjoys playing. Like when you get back to the love of it, I think that was what to me was so profound, was just seeing him like playing and like laughing and joking around on the course, and like having the pressure off of him for the first time in his life.
So good.
You know, like,
you know what's crazy? Because I feel like for us, like not being the biggest golf fans, like obviously we know some golfers, but we're not, I wouldn't say we're golf connoisseurs, unlike rock climbing, that we are connoisseurs.
Rock climbing? Yes.
But with golf, okay, so I'm looking back on this whole situation of understanding when Tiger like had his fall, when he got in trouble, till when he came back, it was only 10 months. And in my mind, I'm like, I thought that was like 3 years.
It seemed like it was 3 years.
Like
I literally thought he took like 2 years off.
Yeah, no, 10
like,
months.
Yeah.
What? That's amazing.
It's crazy.
We've been in lockdown for more than 10 months. Like, how are you doing that?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. I know. But I mean, again, he had that mental tenacity, which, you know, didn't serve him well in the beginning because he wasn't able to like cope with anything really until like he kind of was forced to. But, you know, he still had the mental stamina to be like, okay, like I'm moving on. Like, I am gonna leave that behind. Like, I know that that's who I was. And you're right, like, I don't think he ever, except at the very beginning when he was kind of trying to hide everything,
Mhm.
he didn't really try to hide, like, I mean, it kind of, when it came out, he was like, yes, like, okay,
He
cop to
didn't
it.
deny. He
I
didn't
did it.
deny. Yeah, like he did not deny what was already out there. He didn't try and prove something wrong. I mean, I think that when the first thing came out with Rachel, his main mistress or whatever, I think he did
Yeah.
try to deny that, but once there was proof and evidence, he there how can you can't, like, you literally have to just move through it and come to the other side, which he did. And like, this poor woman Rachel, she goes, I literally have been silent for 10 years because my name is ruined. Like, essentially it is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think she knew, like, that first night when Tiger got her number and the first night that they slept together, I don't think she knew that it would like turn into like an actual relationship where she had feelings or whatever. She's just like, this is $1 million golfer, like, what 20 something like waitress hostess
Yeah,
isn't going to give Tiger Woods her number. Although,
exactly.
how did he bag so many girls? He's not attractive.
Like, literally, like, I think, what was it, like 13 or something?
Something like that.
13 women. I think also, but I mean, I kind of blame his parents in a way. Like,
I do.
he was not set up to understand intimacy,
Right.
to understand a loyal marriage.
Because his dad also was not faithful. They allude to that.
Slanderer.
Like,
Well, and he knows it. I mean, I think the most heartbreaking interview to watch was the golf pro from the Navy course,
yeah.
who was his friend. And he was like, I have to take a second. And
Yeah.
he's like, I'm sorry, but he's like, we were not good role models. And that, you could see the pain
Mm-hmm.
and how much guilt that he feels
Mm-hmm.
for taking this impressionable young little boy, who can barely speak,
Yeah.
and kind of exposing him to a lot of BS,
Yeah.
early on, and not being a great role model to
Yeah.
him when he knew exactly who his father was. You know what I mean? Like, the guy knew who his dad was, the guy knew what he was doing, and he was doing it with them.
Yeah.
So I didn't know about that. And I think, like, he wasn't even allowed to have a girlfriend. So then when Elin came along, how unprepared was he?
Well, he had
You know,
um Dina Parr was his first girlfriend
right.
who had a huge role in this documentary, and she just was heartbroken. Like, I mean, I think she thought she was going to marry this man, but she knew him on such a level that, like, before he was famous, before he was into all this trouble, and like,
The
their
soft,
whole
she was like,
breakup
there was a
their
softness. Yeah.
their breakup, his dad wrote a note to her and was like, we can't do this anymore. It basically, his family broke up with her because it was taking him away from golf. Like, he is a machine.
That's what I mean. Right. Like, when he was starting to have any ounce of, like, like commitment to a
Yeah.
person, like with her, like,
Yeah.
and he had gone to her house and his parents were, like, freaking out about it, and then they made him break up with her. So, like, how could
Hey.
he even understand
Yeah.
how to have a normal relationship? He didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
She was his connect to the real world.
And she knew that.
So I yeah.
So sad. Like, getting that letter, like, essentially it's like the whole family broke up with her. And she was like, what? How?
Yeah, like, what
That
am I
was
supposed
it.
to do? Like, what do you
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah, it was there were so many parts of the documentary that were totally heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But I'm glad, to sum up my feeling about it, it was tough to watch, especially, like, really seeing the breakdown of a person, like their humanity. But I'm glad that I watched it because it gave me a whole different insight into, like, how great he really is and how much of a true legend he really is. Like, not many people can have a comeback like that and pull themselves out of the gutter like that.
No.
You
Honestly,
know,
I second all of those feelings. For me to sum it up, um, I'm really glad I watched it too. I know we were both hesitant because
Yeah.
we were like not the biggest Tiger Woods fans, but like honestly, I have a renewed I I look at him completely different now, and I'm really glad that that was able to happen. So my advice to anybody is if you're a Tiger hater, please watch
Watch.
this because you won't be anymore. Not saying you have to support him in any way, shape, or form, but I think if anyone has hate in their heart for anything, if we can remove that,
Yeah.
that's always a good thing. So I would say watch it.
Yeah. And I
Now,
think I was even going to say, like, I think for people who are big fans of his, but for him as a golfer,
yeah,
I think it's also a great documentary to like see his mental fortitude as an athlete,
yeah,
like, is so impressive and it's frightening.
yeah,
And to kind of like delve in to see that and like why he is the way he is and why he played the way that he plays, you know?
yeah.
So I think it's great for, especially for Tiger haters. Totally agree. But I think also great if like you just love him as like an athlete. I think this gives a whole new perspective to who he actually is.
Love it. So now that we
Yeah.
talked about the hard hitters, I just want
Yeah.
to mention one thing that I noticed throughout. I'm not a big fashion person, obviously, but like seeing in the first documentary how golfers dress compared to like how it has morphed into now. So here we have Tiger. He's like skinny. He has these big clothes on. Even now, I feel like he doesn't wear form fitting things. But if you look at the golfers of today, we have Brooks Koepka, we have Dustin Johnson, these like hunky, hot men that are
Yeah.
like real men. And it's like, what happened?
Who is this guy?
Like,
Like,
what? So you
yeah.
have Brooks Koepka, who is very attractive, and it has
Mhm.
just like this lackadaisical, like is a winning golf tournaments, but also is just like, yeah, I'm like a little bored around like holes like 7 through 10, holes 7 through 12, or 7 through 15, 10 through 15. I pick it up 13 through 18, whatever. And then you have Tiger, who's this like, I know he was trying to get bigger by doing Navy SEALs. He's like this smaller, statured man who's
Yeah.
very like reserved. And
Yeah.
now golfers, I feel like, have transformed. They're more out there now, like Dustin Johnson, who's married to Wayne Gretzky's daughter, like
Oh
Paulina.
my God.
What is that?
Yes.
So yeah, I just think the fashion has changed and the fashion of the muscles. Like the muscles are bigger now, and I'm into that type of golfer, if you know what I'm saying.
Hit me up.
But yeah, that's just something I noticed throughout. I'm like, wow, golfers are very different now.
They really are. I mean, yeah, the whole style, the whole like kind of like swagger about them has changed a little bit, you know,
Yeah,
and I think funny enough, I think it kind of started with Tiger. Like I think he kind of brought this, you know, electric energy, and you know, as geeky as he was, you know, just like there was just a different energy when he played and you could
yeah,
feel it.
yeah.
Like, and just getting the what do they call them, the onlookers, the spectators, there's a word, the
Oh,
cafeteria, I don't know, they called it something, they called the
Gophers,
group of
the
people,
Gophers.
oh,
I don't know.
maybe, I don't know, but they were like, there was a different energy, like this renewed kind of like excitement about the game because every single like swing was something crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now I think he leveled up the playing field, you know? Like he was something that nobody had ever seen before. And
Hmm.
other golfers had to be like, okay, how do I teach myself to do that?
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
how do
what
I
can I do?
become that? Like,
Yeah.
how do I become this superstar kind of guy?
Hmm.
So I don't know. I really, I did not anticipate liking it as much as I was going to.
Okay. So let's just one last comment, then we'll give our champagne flutes, then we'll introduce our virtual guests.
Yeah.
Okay. So at the end, when he wins in present time and hugs his son, I literally was waterworks. I was hysterical.
Oh my God, I was bawling at the end. And I
Bawling.
was like, it took so much to get here. I was like, and he's back.
He's like his son, and his son, like they separated, but then they were like, they went back. It just
I
was
know.
so good.
Well, now he just played with his son for the first time recently.
And his son's
So
good.
yeah, he is. But it's all, it's coming full circle, which I think might be the greatest thing. And I think for him, maybe he'll be able to be the golf dad that he always wanted to have, or he may have needed to have.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a chance for him to do it right this time. And that's what made me like just feel so, I was like, oh my God, he has the choice. He has the chance to be a great dad.
I'm just clapping for it because I'm clapping for Tiger. I'm rooting for him the rest of his life. I want him to win. I want him to pass the records, and I want him to win 19 Opens so he can pass, who is it? Phil Mickelson? Jack somebody?
Yeah, no, yeah, Phil. I think it was Phil Mickelson, right? Maybe not.
Either way, let's go Tiger. Okay.
Love him.
So, all right.
Him.
How many champagne flutes are you going to give? I'll go first.
Go first.
I think I would give it 4. I would
four?
give it 4 champagne flutes out of 5 because I didn't like that. I felt like it was such a task at first to watch it. I didn't like that it was so long and you had to set aside like nearly almost 4 hours if you wanted to watch it in full in a row. I didn't like that. I think that's kind of like a fear factor that people might see and be like, I'm not going to watch this because it's so long. But aside from that, I thought it was great. Like we mentioned before, I loved, hearing all about it. And I think it needed to be as detailed as it was. Like I said in the beginning, they could have like omitted some details, but I think looking back now that we discussed it, I think you needed all those details to really understand like how damaged he really is and how amazing it is for him to be where he is now. So I give it 4.
Yeah, funny enough, I was going to say 4 as well. For me, and pretty much for the same reasons. Like I thought it was too long because it is a daunting, like I think with documentaries, you have a window of time that people will be interested. Yeah. I liked that they broke it down into 2 parts, but again, like you have to really, really want to see this documentary. Like if you're just looking at it on like the queue on HBO Max, I feel like you would click past it because you're like 4.5 hours. Like who has that time?
Yeah.
But I do think that it's worth it. And I agree. Like, I think the details could not have been spared because it just leads up to that kind of like big release that you feel at the end of like joy, like real joy for him.
Yeah.
Because you needed to see all the little inner workings and, how salacious the whole situation actually was. So you can really appreciate what he had to overcome to get to where he is now. Yeah. So yeah, I would give it 4.
When you texted me, you were like, this is so salacious. I'm like, it has to be because that's what his life was. That's, essentially what was going on. And like, it's not like they were exaggerating what happened. They were just telling the true story. So yeah. But
yeah, like literally cool. Whether you wanted to hear it or not.
Exactly. So we heard it and we are glad we heard it, to be honest. So, all right. So let's introduce our guest. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll go first. Okay. I mean, I've talked about him before. He's been a guest of mine before, but Andy Cohen of Bravo, I think he would have for sure been a producer on this. I don't know how much he loves sports, right. But I think like from a kind of like reality TV, kind of like investigative journalism, looking for the drama, looking for the tea at all times, I think this would have been right up his alley. And I think it would have been something you could find on Bravo. You could watch on Bravo.
Love it.
To get on there. And I could see him interviewing him too in a weird way, being like, so what do you like? how many affairs did you have? Like, I could just see him being like a really intense interviewer about the affairs, about the drugs, because that's what he does to the housewives.
Yeah.
So he doesn't let them get away with it. So
That would be such a great interview. I'd love to see that.
right, just like kind of like a little
Love
fluffy, really drama.
Yeah. Okay. Love that. I always love a good Andy Cohen appearance on
Love a good Andy Cohen. Yeah.
So I think I'm going to introduce resident NBA bad boy from the 90s, Dennis Rodman.
Yeah.
Because I think he would have a lot to say about his nightclub etiquette and about his game, his flirting game, although he's married. I mean, Dennis Rodman married Carmen Electra. Like, let's be for real. So resident bad boy, he literally would go to Vegas for one night, come home to Chicago and be like, I need a rest day. Like,
yes, sorry.
The NBA in the 90s was like another animal.
It's
However,
like a shit. Oh.
yeah, totally. And so here we have Tiger Woods, who's going to clubs in Vegas with Michael Jordan, teammates with Dennis Rodman when they were both on the Bulls. And we have Tiger being like asking MJ, like, what do I say to these women? Like,
yeah.
Because he's married and he's confused and he has no like human skills. So he's just like a lump on a log. And MJ goes, just tell him you're Tiger Woods. And clearly that worked because we just discussed the entire history of his infidelity. Mm-hmm. So I think Dennis Rodman would wish he could be there and be a part of it. And maybe he was, and we just didn't know. And B, he would probably give him lessons to step up his game and probably get more women to sleep with him. And B, if you're being non-faithful, like, why not have more? Like, let's get up to 20. Why not? So,
right. You'd be like, let's get on your plane. Let's go to Vegas.
Yeah.
We've got 12 hours.
Yeah. I think he would go to Vegas with him for 12 hours, teach him some bad boy game tricks, and then call it a day.
Poor Tiger. He wouldn't have a chance.
But I would say, no. But I would say in relation to the documentary, I think he would hate it. I think he would want and nothing to do with it. And I think he would be mad and upset that all of this came out about Tiger. Although he is in the spotlight, I think he would be mad that this whole thing was made. You know what? Because in the 90s, everybody was like looking into Dennis Rodman and like all the bad things he was doing. And I know that it's not ideal to have people see bad things that you're doing.
Right, and just be totally privy to everything you're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, no.
All right.
Tea time with Mel and Jay. Getting the tea on Tiger Woods. Putting the tea in Tiger Woods.
We did it again. We talked the tea on Tiger Woods. We brought in our fave, Andy Cohen, your fave.
My fave. I don't know if Dennis Rodman's our fave, but
not my fave, although he was a terrific and aggressive defender. He was always the go-to guy. So into it, love it. So we'll see you guys next time on episode 7. We did it again. We'll see you later.